Hello again, Odin Rathnam here on my YouTube channel, Defining Virtuosity. Today, next on the agenda, putting some of the virtues together and discussing the interpretation and execution of the G minor fugue of Johann Sebastian Bach from Sonata Number 1. I'm going to divide the work into sections to make things clear, so that we will cover first from the opening fugue statement through the first episode until bar 14, and then from bar 14 until the D minor statement of the fugue at bar 24, and from there through to the second episode that one could argue begins at 35 or 36 or so and goes through until about 51, and so on and so forth, dividing the sections up and working through. So there'll be some points where I stop. A few simple things to remember. While I remember what I want to do interpretively when I'm practicing this slowly, I am not afraid to do some things ever so slightly differently when I'm practicing it than when I'm performing it. And this is just in case there are some Baroque aficionados that get upset with any clicks or catches or anything on the beginning of chords when I demonstrate, because those will get largely eliminated in performance except for where I actually want them. But in terms of teaching fundamentals of string crossings and preparing the hand, a great way to make sure that we're on a chord before we play it is to have the crossing action done like this as a pivoting with the fingers, and making sure that we've caught the next string before we play it. So in the practice room, I don't mind hearing the click, as long as it doesn't come from any forceful arm movement. However, in performance, for the most part, we get rid of these. I'll smooth it out, but just for practice purposes only, we will be doing catch and release. The fugue motive is a 9-note theme, okay? A couple of good things to remember is that we're always going towards the 4th note and then backing away to the 9th. The other thing to note is that the strings that the voices are in change constantly. And in general, it's best for, on our chord batteries, for the bow to be in the middle string, but for the vowel portion of the stroke to be wherever the voice is, so that we hear the voice leading. So the best way to get the shape that my teacher taught me, Miss Thomas, was to incorporate a Z bowing, where we used more bow, a little more bow on the first note, a little less, more, and most here, and then came into the bridge a little bit to slow the bow energy down. So we had less energy, more, most. Okay? When we end the phrase, the moment you end, you breathe, but you're touching the next string, because now the arm wants to be on the plane where we're playing, which will be, the melody will be. The third measure, the voice will be in the E string. Okay? In bar 4, we start on the A string, but halfway through bar 5, we're briefly on the D string, and at the downbeat of 6, we're on the E string. What you can do at home to help yourself out is take a highlighter, could be like chartreuse or yellow or something that's not too distracting, but that calls your eye to where the voices are, and you can highlight that. It's a good way to remind your arm where you want it to be. Two Kreutzer etudes that you could practice to prepare this are the F minor and the D major. For scooping and loosening these two parts of your hand up for the chord batteries. They're both very, very healthy. So is number 13 and some of the other string crossing ones with separate bows. Just because these springs and pivoting actions become very important for catching chords comfortably and not forcing them, and being able to control the sound. Even if we do it far from the frog, if we're crossing from here to the lower string, we lead with the arm and catch up with the finger. And you want that to be cushioned side to side and bending the thumb, so that there's a little vertical and horizontal give to the wrists, so that these springs are functioning and this spring is functioning well. So to demonstrate a little bit, when I practice slowly, I'll have content, but a certain degree of, I don't want to call it emotional detachment, because that's not good either, but stoicism. Yoda's in the house, yeah? So... Again. Bit of information about the first episode that you heard of the 16th notes. My feeling about all of the episodes is that they can be a little freer than the fugue statements, but we want to remember the tempo of the fugue when we come out of that. That means that if the episode should run a little bit and meander a little in and out, we want to make sure that we don't plow into the fugue statement, but place it afterwards so that it stands in sharp relief. We can open up quite a bit after the chords. And I use tonic dissonant harmony to decide how to shape, in my case. There was a great talk that Janos Starker gave on Bach interpretation. Told some students to expand the volume and the expression if the line was going upwards, and maybe diminuendo if it went downward, or to do the same with the dynamic if there was more harmonic tension, and then if it was resolving to consonants to weaken it, and then occasionally to do the opposite so as not to be boring, which I thought was a really good point. So we can break the rule deliberately if we feel strongly that we want to do something differently. So you can be a little bit, like I said, a little bit more fantasyful here. Where are we again? I'm stopping as a reminder that I want to end an idea, take a breath, and start the new one. The pauses will not be as great in performance, but it's a great way to just really remind yourself, cadence, new character. So then you have to, next thing, I would still practice that now. New phrase there again. This two-part fugue, two-part canon, or whatever you want to call it, here is notoriously difficult. It deserves some time. I would go back and do it 2 or 3 times. Very clinically for stroke quality. Diminuendo, new voice. Sing. Diminuendo, more, diminuendo, more, less, new phrase. And here, I'm only doing that way for now. It'll be more legato. People really forget to, when we get into 3 and 4 note batteries, to end the phrases. That's when we start hearing, so I'm not going to argue about Baroque practice as opposed to playing it more. I play it more old school like sharing. Some other people play it different ways. But what I will say is, if you don't end a phrase, and if you don't breathe, then it's just anti-musical. So what we don't want is... you know, bam, bam, bam. So always. So that takes a little bit of work. Also, I like to set my elbow more in and close to my body for this 5th. I found that it helps the pitch. And then this, less. Lease. Now these next ones, really make sure that the left hand is in place and that you still bow as legato as possible. Yeah, so slowly. Again. That's a phrase ending there. And you know, you can do the ink. I don't mind having a lift here, but again, in performance, oh, how did I do that? That's wrong. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. No, it's up, up. Always that comes down. And a cadence, you take a breath in bar 25 after the 5th, 8th note value before the last 3/8, so that you really trill. So you really cadence. You can trill on the C sharp if you like. Not necessary, but you can. always on these end on the chord. End on the chord. You're ready. Middle string touching the lower, arm on the middle string, but the pivot to cover the lower string, and flexibility for and then everything rounded. It'll feel like you're drawing circles in this way if you don't want to force. That'll make the bow go straight, actually. But it feels like counterclockwise circles here, clockwise circles here. That's the figure eight. Now, the misconception is if you put the center of the figure eight too far this way, it's not going to sound good. We have to back it up. All you have to do, if you want to understand what I mean, is watch the video of Galamian teaching Josh Bell when he's about 11 or 12 years old on YouTube. And you can see what he's working on with Josh at that point, and said you don't want to have your wife have to come with you and hold your arm back while you play. So we have to orient the figure eight in the right center, where the straight point of the figure eight is more backed up than we think. Then going out and in becomes very easy. It's not forced, it's not exaggerated. This is a misconception. So when you do the chords, here, I feel inward, here, not as out as I want to, because and you can track it with the sound when you're listening, and you can watch it. The problem when you watch it though is what is straight here looks from your point of view here like it's slightly this way, so you have to get used to it. You have to practice in front of a mirror this way, the way I'm facing you, this way watching your arm, and with your head, so that you develop what I call both objective and subjective perception. But the biggest way you'll understand it is in the sound and in your body. Remember I said comfort and result. You'll hear it. When the sound will be better. When you have the right angle, when it's at 90 degrees at the point of contact at the beginning of the stroke, the sound will be better right away. Right away. People make a mistake of playing this very loud, and we've got a long way to go. I've heard so often. And I think we have this. Here you have the option of doing the Galamian execution. If you like, I do Shering's version. And then going to the other execution here. A little word about this next section. I've heard so many people do this way. Or, I think if we observe, again, some of the virtues that I pointed out in the beginning that are very important to me. Remember we said finger, bow, go, and that string crossings also happen before strokes on planes. If you could make sure when you practice this that you are here before you'll get a much smoother connection. Yeah, that both. So always being on the plane that you want to make the sound on before you make the sound. If you're still crossing, the angles are all off. You're like this. It's not working together, and that goes. It's counter. It doesn't make any sense. So when you have, just because we have a tricky string crossing, doesn't mean we have to slap into the upper string like so many have done in that particular spot. I just warn against that. So we get to the end of that, and we have we're now in the middle of the second episode. And again, all of this, once you practice it this way, even with this type of technique, if you choose that all of this you want more Baroque, and a lot more air in it, that's fine. But still be on the plane that you're supposed to be on before you do each of your strokes. However you're doing it. You could do it very light. Or you can do it heavier or in between. But observe the rules. Be on the plane before you make the stroke. Anticipate. Have the finger in the correct spot before you make the stroke. So we'll get through this now. One word about that measure, and I just did a little boo-boo. If you let the tempo get away too much from you, you might forget to have slow bow speeds between those slurs. Prepare, prepare, prepare. And that's an ending. Question mark. That's more firm. Yeah, so we have little note. In the Heifetz master classes, when Eric Friedman is playing that for me, he says, how about playing all the G's? There's a fugue note missing here that Heifetz felt must have been an error. That's up for discussion, and people can do as they please. I'm 54 years old and don't have to enter competitions anymore, so I don't give a rat's ass what any judge in a competition thinks. I would not counsel my students to add that G, though. Yeah, that's just a little point. And you, as long as you follow the same rules of there. And the phrase. This is the most shocking chord. So if you do the downbeat of 20 of 54 too strongly, even though it is a continuation, one could argue, you will make the second half of the bar not as dramatic. So if we do this a little simpler, again here, this chord, I would be on the D and A plane and try to catch almost all four, but focus on the legato. I saw a tutorial with a famous concertmaster, and everything was correct about the execution, but it was still a very hard attack. It is possible to do these, almost legato. This is the only time that I actually start the new fugue section loud, because we're still in C minor, and it doesn't for me, relax harmonically until we get back to a major key. So I start this one a little more firm. Yeah. Then I have room to grow here, and I don't have to kill the next section right away. Oh, one little thing about the intonation here. Another spot to be less rotated in the shoulder and more turned in the hand, and the wrist inward, if anything. It sets up the hand. Diminuendo. I'm exaggerating, but otherwise you're going to kill yourself here. So, from C minor. Now, here's a little secret. When you get to here, keep this sounding, the D a little bit, keep the middle string, it'll make it less brutal there. So again, phrase ending. And the phrase. And be early to the middle string, but remember that you're going to end on the low string in your mind. You want to hear it equally this time, because there's the melody in the D string, but a descending bass line at the same time. They're both important, I feel. Less so in the next one, but this one you want to hear those. Now here, this seventh, it's so unique. One of the things I always have to remind myself of is don't be muscular, because I want to control exactly the sound there. So I actually work quite hard on getting from here to a sound. No muscularity from here. So I'll just go make the page turn early and do one more time. What I'm doing is slowing the bow speeds and taking the energy out of everything. A little Baroque nod, a little less romantic. A little word about the vibrato, because that gets away from me very easily. I've got very big hands, and if I don't think about it, it gets into the realm of Tchaikovsky very easily. This is when to think of an impulse vibrato, almost just a Bach aesthetic, just a little light fingers. In the E major partita, we have this moment in the E major partita and this moment right here in B flat major have always struck me as somehow reconciliatory, redemption, forgiveness, God reaching out his mercy upon us and saying, it's going to be okay. You can still enter the pearly gates. There's something about it that's always struck me as, and it deserves a special color that you may have to search for. But when you get to now, two little things about this passage that we're coming to. When Galamian fingered it, he put a fourth finger down to have this phrase end, which I think is a good idea, before the next thing. But right before that, we can make that easier by doing something sneaky. If you look at the end of bar 73, try, if you like, 2, 3, circled, squared 1. Now square the 4. You just cut the distance by a position. You're not leaping from first to third, but rather from second to third. Yeah, so it's just a thought. The next passage, this becomes a question of personal taste. If you end the phrase on the high D, it would be weak. If you start the phrase on the high D, it should be strong. I do it that way. So I end. And release. So. My students often get in trouble here, and it's for a very simple reason. Their left hands aren't ready and they bow too soon when they grab the chords. So you have to, when you're working under tempo, practice having the sounds take place with the metronome, but the preparations be a little bit before that. When you get to here, that's where practicing the catch is good. Okay, have the catch happen early so that the sound happens with your metronome. And then once you know that you've prepared it like that, you can get it back to no click. So that you. And then one more word about the tonic dissonant relationships. Yeah, this is more quite dissonant. This is a resolution. This is the same relationship but smaller. And then, right? So this is the weakest. We've come down then by terrace dynamics. Now it's going the other way. We're going to C minor, and then we're coming to this really dissonant, diminished chord. So we have. And we come back down. Now, this is the build up to the fugal climax. We've just gone through the third episode, and now we're building towards the fugal climax, which happens at bar 86. Wait, before then, sorry. Bar 82, right? And then we have our episodic climax that begins at 87, leading to the big, 5/7 chord at 93, and with the flourish afterwards. So we have to plan this out dynamically. We can't kill ourselves. Again, it's a place where young artists, they're in the practice room going slam, bam, 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 back and forth. And not only does it exhaust them physically, but it's anti-musical. So we want to really be cogent about our planning, our pacing dynamically. So we have from here. Everything planned early in the hand. An optional fingering for this is 2, 4, 3, 2, and 4, 4, 4, 3, 1, and 4. It will strain some hands less than the printed fingering. So again, we have the option of altering Mr. G's fingering here. Okay, you can start it with a 4. Okay, that's why I practice these minor third shapes in the hands. It can get us out of a lot of trouble in this particular place because it's easy to get that 3 a fifth over. And the 1, it's easy to get back to the E flat. All right. Once we've played this chord, in order for the vibrato to work well, release the first finger in the bass knuckle downward. Let the arm just fall. Don't squeeze the shoulder. If you start with the turned hand again, it can release that way. Yeah? So just, it's a thought. Again, observe the Z bowing, but less in a smaller version. So if I'm doing a Z bowing with more bow, I'll be farther from the bridge. If I'm doing one that's smaller, make up for it with the sounding point and a little extra weight. And again, here again, cross for and once you have that, legato again. Climax right there. All right, so now some people do. I don't agree. You can hear it just fine, and it'll fall rhythmically right in time there. In this particular case, there are other places where I will break from above, but because as long as you don't force the upper part of those chords, okay. For that one chord, I feel that way. That's fine. And then again, we have five chord of C majors. That is that G7 chord. This is more than this. So we have and here, left hand first. Sorry, I played wrong notes. Sorry. Phrase ending. New phrase. Don't play louder, just make it more legato here. So what I do is I play more space. Okay, a couple of things about this. Be on the new string, all rounded, and anticipate that in a round way. I like Isai, you know, not jerking to the new plane, but anticipating. So. So the last flourishes from the 5/7 chord at 93, make sure to vibrate the first note off of the tie and not kick the bow speed. The same thing with the 8th note upbeat to the final penultimate bar. That when you go from here, that's not a good idea. Round everything, so hold the G itself, this note, a little extra long at the very end. So there you have it, a little tutorial on Bach's G minor fugue. I hope it benefits you. Subscribe to my channel and help spread the word. Bye.